welcome to the Evening News' weekend review for the week ending Saturday, March 9, 2019. I'm Davina Ramdas. Thanks for joining us. For the next 30 minutes, we'll recap some of the top stories that were featured during the past week. We begin by telling you that Indigenous leaders are calling for stricter security in border communities as the influx of Venezuelan migrants has resulted in an increase in security and health issues. Leah Hernandez has the details in this report filed on Monday.
Devroy Thomas, a representative of the Amerindian People's Association, is calling for the situation to be brought under control immediately. Thomas represents communities in Region 7, where many Venezuelan migrants have settled. He said while the village leaders understand the need to render support, the issue has become very complicated since these migrants are bringing with them bad practices which can corrupt the communities. Thomas said the alarming issues are the prevalence of sexual transmitted diseases and an increase in crime.
Well, the situation is very, very complicated now because of the influx of the migrants into our village areas, not directly in our village, but in the mines that is around our village. And there are a number of them, hundreds of them, but there's no one to look into them really to try to help them. The police, the presence of the police and the GDF is there, but they are not much doing to help them in whatever way they can. Because I'll tell you about the situation right now. It has been said that it has been reported by the CHW, who is community health worker in our village, that a lot of STDs, the disease STD is spreading now. And our fellow Guyanese miners are, they're living home, and some of the youths in the village have been affected now. Some of them have been referred to Georgetown because of there's no drugs available. There's a small pharmacy that is owned by a Colombian national on Guyana shore, but there's no medication now. It run out, and it's very difficult for those people to get the treatment for those STDs diseases that are taking place in our area.
Thomas explained that village leaders made some efforts to have Venezuelan children registered in school, but this was hindered due to the fact that they illegally entered the country. UNICEF has since announced plans to expand school infrastructure in certain communities to deal with this issue. Meanwhile, the APA representative said Indigenous communities are doing their part in assisting these migrants, but he noted that greater aid can only be provided by central government.
We were trying to get them into school. And the persons who were with the children, the younger children, they wanted their children to attend the school, but they haven't done much. There was some information given them. They need to come through a legal procedure, meaning they should enter Guyana legally, and so most of them are coming illegally into Guyana. So that's my understanding of it.
The population of Arawa and Kaikine village combined is estimated around 180 households, and residents are growing worried about their lifestyle being negatively impacted by these migrants, especially if they are left unsupervised. Reporting for the Evening News, I'm Leah Hernandez.
On Tuesday, we reported that the parliamentary opposition has agreed to extend the deadline for national elections, but only if the David Granger-led administration adheres to certain requests, including to have elections before the expiry date of the current voters list on April 30. Davina Samaru has the details.
Opposition leader Bar Jagdeo last evening responded to the head of state's invitation for a meeting tomorrow by laying out certain conditions. Jagdeo proposed that the general and regional elections to be held before the expiration of the present voters list on April 30th, 2019. That no new contracts to be awarded by the state after March 21st, 2019, when the government becomes unconstitutional. That no new agreements, loans, grants, land leases, or any other such agreements or contracts be entered into after March 21st, 2019. That there is no abuse of state resources for partisan activities and purposes, and that access to state-owned media by all contesting parties be granted. Jagdeo said the parliamentary opposition will be prepared to lend its support for the two-thirds majority required for an extension beyond March 21st, 2019, but only if the government agrees to those terms. Following the passage of a no-confidence motion, elections are to be held within 3 months according to the Constitution of Guyana. The only way the deadline for the polls can be extended is through a 2/3 majority vote in the National Assembly. Otherwise, the government effectively becomes illegal. But GCOM has insisted that it is unprepared to hold elections before the constitutionally due deadline. As such, the opposition leader informed the president that his proposal to have elections before April 30th is reasonable and feasible with a claims and objections period, provided that GCOM acts in good faith and in conformity with its mandate and the Constitution. Jagdeo says if the president finds favor with the proposal, he will meet with him tomorrow as requested. The opposition leader nonetheless reminded that time is of the essence and that the date by which the government becomes unconstitutional is fast approaching. Davina Samaru reporting for the Evening News.
The highly anticipated meeting between opposition leader Bar Jagdeo and President David Granger ended in stalemate on Wednesday as the issue regarding the date for an election was not successfully addressed. Here are the details.
Frankly speaking, I'm not optimistic. Nevertheless, we are responding to what a substantial part of our community want, which is to engage. We're making this last attempt to engage with the government.
That was opposition leader Bar Jagdeo speaking to the media upon his arrival at the Ministry of the Presidency for a high-level meeting with President David Granger today. Jagdeo came out later stating that his team did not get past the first issue on the agenda, that is, setting a date for elections. Jagdeo also revealed that he turned down the offer to join a government delegation to meet GCOM on the issue.
I said to him, no, we have absolutely no interest in meeting GCOM jointly, that he should meet GCOM himself because he has the duty as president to call elections. And then we are not accepting them going to house-to-house registration, because house-to-house registration would delay the elections for at least 8 months.
In light of concerns regarding electoral fraud, the opposition leader said the issue could be addressed through government funding.
We can hire, the state can pay for 3 polling agents from both parties to sit in every polling place to ensure only people who are eligible to vote, vote, so that you don't have to worry about the quality of the list or padding, etc. But it is not GCOM. GCOM cannot override the Constitution.
Meanwhile, the president claimed that the engagement was fruitful, whereas both government and the opposition are working towards finding a solution to the issues. Granger did admit that discussions between him and Jagdeo and their respective teams were mainly centered on GCOM because it is the only entity that could deliver an election.
The leader of the opposition was insistent that a date be set, and he is, in all fairness, prepared to vary the date based on a vote by the National Assembly. I, on the 25th of February, wrote the chairman of GCOM indicating that I am prepared to enter consultations with him to ensure that credible elections are held in as short a time as possible. And I would like to meet him again. In fact, I'd like to meet the entire commission to determine what the needs are in terms of time and money. So the door is open.
The head of state said he will work to have an election at the earliest possible time while denouncing reports of Guyana facing a crisis.
There are issues which have to be resolved, and most of those issues will depend on what I hear from GCOM when I consult them.
Government and 3 elections commissioners have already stated that the next general elections could not be held without house-to-house registration. But Jagdeo is insisting that credible elections can be held without that exercise, which can last as long as 9 months. In the meantime, government has just a few more days left before the March 21st deadline is reached. After that time, they become an illegal government. Meanwhile, the 2 leaders are likely to meet again in the future. Davina Samaru reporting for the Evening News.
Also on that day, we reported that despite calls from the opposition for an election date to be set, President David Granger is adamant that he is not responsible for making that decision. Likram Bagirat filed that report.
In a live streaming from the Ministry of the Presidency's Facebook page moments after this morning's engagement with the opposition, President Granger maintained that only the elections body can determine when elections are held.
Let me make one thing clear. GCOM is an autonomous, GCOM is an independent agency, and there is no part of the Constitution which gives the President or the executive in general authority to interfere, intervene, or intrude in the work of the Election Commission. GCOM is in charge of the elections, not the executive. I cannot decide when elections will be held. GCOM has to advise.
But GCOM's website makes it clear that by virtue of Article 226 of the Constitution, the Commission, like other constitutional commissions, shall not be subject to the direction and control of any other person or authority. However, schedules for the conduct of general, regional, and local government elections are decided upon by the Commission once a date for the elections is announced by the President. In fact, government's nominated Commissioner Vincent Alexander 2 weeks ago had explained that GCOM can only commence preparations for the hosting of elections when a date has been set by the President.
You don't seem to understand. It's not for GCOM to automatically go into preparing for the election outside of an order from the President giving a date. The President has to give a date for elections, and that is what GCOM has to work with, because there are statutory dates leading up to that date. You can't determine those statutory dates outside of an order.
GCOM has informed the head of state that it was unable to deliver general and regional elections before the constitutional March 19 deadline. The President has since requested to have consultations with the elections body to discuss its preparedness and funding for the hosting of polls. According to State Minister Joseph Harmon, who was also in today's hour-long meeting, this engagement with GCOM will be held within the coming days with the aim of ensuring that credible elections are held within the shortest time possible. For the Evening News, Likram Bagirat.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.